Hello and welcome to episode 316 of the Smash Accept podcast. I'm your host, Michael Royer. You can find me on Twitter at Dynasty Dad FF. We got a great show planned for you here. We're going to be going over the post-combine updated rookie wide receiver rankings and tiers with my main man, Snoog. A lot of things really shook up. A lot of guys rose. Some guys fell a little bit. We're here to help you guys break it down, the next step of the process. Snoog, combine's over. Now the next step is the NFL draft. I'm super excited. We're going to talk a lot about these guys that rose like we just did in our combine episode, and we're going to see where guys fall into these tiers now.
Yeah, underrated rookie wide receiver class. Definitely not the strength of this. We know the running backs are, but still going to be good values, and we're going to kind of highlight these tiers for you guys and kind of throw a little bit of a comparison to the 2024 before we jump into it, just so you can kind of see where those prospects slotted into these tiers. But no S tier prospects in this one, so let's jump into this and see where these guys fall.
Yeah, we have our Patreon link there before, patreon.com/smashaccept. Your best way to smash the offseason. The Rookie Guide 2.0 is now getting updated with all your combine times, all your different scores, everything that we're looking at to complete the process of your Rookie Guide and your rookie process. The next part here, we're going to really not have our faces covered up like that, but here we are. We're going to talk about these rookies. We're going to cover every single one. We're going to give you the guys that we want, the guys that we like, and Snoog alluded to it already, that there is no S-tier wide receivers in this class, right? Last year, we had Harrison, we had Neighbors, we had Rome Odunze, Ladd McConkey, Brian Thomas Jr., Worthy, a lot of guys that were really up there. In this year's class, we don't, right now in that S tier, I mean, Neighbors is in there, Harrison's in there, BTJ, Ladd, it's loaded. Some of these guys could rise with the right landing spot, but Snoog, consistently across the board, we have about 3 guys that we think could eventually bump into this tier. We have multiple other guys that could really find themselves as really nice back-end wide receiver 1, mid to better wide receiver 2s.
Yeah, I'm excited to jump into this one because there's a lot of guys. Like we said last year, Malik Neighbors, Marv were S-tier prospects. We don't have any of those in this year's class, but your Rome Odunze's, your Brian Thomas Jr.'s, your Ladd McConkey's. I think we have maybe 2 to 3 potential guys that can be like those guys that are in that A-tier range. And then B-tier is those guys you're looking for. Your Rashi Rice, your Jaden Reeds, your Jordan Addisons, those type of players, kind of that Zay Flowers, like that sneak into that round 1, early round 2 range that can be guys that elevate themselves as top 15, top 20 dynasty wide receivers or stay in that top 30 range. Then C tier and D tier guys that are going to probably go in that D2 early day 3 range. Then we're going to throw some dart throws your way at the end. So right away, Dad, A tier, Tetairoa McMillan. Let's jump into him because I'm sick of hearing anybody slandering his profile, who he is and what he's doing. So sell us on Tet McMillan and why he needs to be still in that consideration as a top 2 wide receiver in this class.
He's still the wide receiver 1 of this class. I think a lot of people are really post-combine pushing up Matthew Golden because he produced at the combine where Tetairoa McMillan sat out, but we saw him back-to-back 1,300-yard seasons, someone that has 10 touchdown upside. We talk a lot about him looking like a Drake London, Mike Evans type, contested catches, but more than just that, right? You and I were talking about it. He broke 30 tackles last year, someone that is great yards after the catch. He is not just a guy that's just going to run go routes and get bombs and be a contested catch guy. He's someone that wins at all levels of the field, could really be a power slot guy and dominate at the NFL level. I think he has the best chance out of anybody here to go into that S tier as his rookie year if he gets the right landing spot. The issue here is he's no longer my 102, not because of what he did, but because of the way that Omarion Hampton performed, the way Cam Ward could be going number 1 overall. So I think that could change things a little bit. But as far as wide receivers go, he's my wide receiver 1. I'm seeing him
29 missed tackles forced at 6'4", Dad. Like that is he's good in his yards per out run. Everything else checks the box. Production, tape. Crazy good athlete. I bet you he would have jumped like a 40-inch vertical if he tested.
Yeah, he would have tested really well, and I think, but he doesn't have much to prove. You look at a lot of the guys. We saw Marvin Harrison Jr. didn't produce last year at the combine. I think that's just become a thing where you don't really have to as much anymore. Like today's NFL, it's not going to be there. But he's firmly an A tier for me as my wide receiver 1. Our wide receiver 2, we both agree here on. We both have the same exact guy. Another Ohio State product. Sell me here on Emeka.
Yeah, he's a guy that can run every single route on the football field, win at all three levels, win versus zone, win versus man, above a 2+ career yards per route run number. Playing in that Ohio State room is phenomenal. Like, he played along two of the best wide receiver prospects that we're going to see in 10+ years in Jeremiah Smith and Marvin Harrison Jr. Both of those seasons, he posted 1,000+ yards, 75+ receptions, caught a ton of touchdowns. I had him listed in my rookie guide in the profile that we put together as the chain mover. That's the perfect way to explain him. Savvy route runner, natural space creator, can run every route, good footwork, polished receiver. He clocked in at 6 foot, 202 pounds. He's not small. Mm-hmm. He's not your little small slot receiver. He's your Amon-Ra St. Brown, your Jackson Smith and Jigba, your Golden Tate. He's your beefy yak, good route runner, separator, can play in the Z, can play in the slot, can win a little bit on the outside. He projects to be one of the best fantasy football wide receivers in this class for sure, if not the best from a fantasy football perspective. He's close with Tet, man. Like, they're 1A, 1B. I think they're both solidified top 20 draft picks. Anybody saying that Tet and Emeka Egbuka is not going to be a first-round pick, I think it's crazy. I think he is so deserving of it, and he's unlike Matthew Golden, unlike Luther Burden, unlike Tre Harris, he performed alongside other elite NFL wide receivers. Those guys were playing with me, playing wide receiver 2 on their team. So this guy is the second best wide receiver in this class. There's one more guy that we have in this tier that I want you to hit on and talk about the context, because nobody knows where to put him.
Yeah, and to clarify what you were talking about, as far as drafting in the wide receivers, if a guy goes top 5, we're going to see elite level production. Top 12, that's another tier. Then from 13 to about 25, there's not a lot of difference of where they go. It's landing spot. And so many people are worried up about that. And then for me, even from like 25 to 40, we have another area there where it's like, okay, they're still going to go there. They're still showing they're getting elite level draft capital. Someone that's going to get absolute elite level draft capital. Guy that is so hard to predict right now. But, you know, I saw Matthew Harmon, who you and I love, comped Hunter to a prime OBJ. Someone that 80% win rate versus success rate and versus man and in zone. Like, he looks fantastic. If he was just a wide receiver, he's the wide receiver one, and he's an S tier, period. I hope that's what we see, right? I hope that's what we see, because if we knew Travis Hunter was a wide receiver only, he would be the 102 in rookie drafts, and he belongs in S tier. And I go back and forth on this, because sometimes I'm like, man, I rank him as low as 111, and I'm like, because I don't want to see him 50% snap share. I don't want to see him only on the field here and there. But then I'm like, I go back and forth. Then I'm like, damn, he should be the wide receiver 1. Like, because what's ultimately going to happen? What's more important to your team when you're talking about overall success? The corner versus the wide receiver. And it's going to be very dependent. But a lot of teams are telling him they want him wide receiver only. Other teams are telling him they want him cornerback only. I hope we get a real clear picture of that. But if I'm rebuilding, man, he's the ultimate buy low in your draft. Like, you could get a diamond in the rough at 110, 111, and he's worth 101, 102.
He won the Heisman, the Biletnikoff Award, best DB in the country, 96 receptions, 1,258 yards, and 15 touchdowns receiving while playing both sides of the football, 55 first downs, 2.5 plus yards per route run. He's hit 2+ yards per run every single year in his college football career. Early declare, breakout age, draft capital is going to check that box. 1,000-yard season checks that. He checks every single box in our prospect overview that we look for when we're grading. He grades out as an A+ prospect. Like, set it and forget it. Like, absolute stud. One of the most gifted athletes I've watched. I see a lot of Garrett Wilson in his game with the way he can play bigger than he is, his gifted jumping ability. He's another one that at his pro day, I guarantee you Tet and Travis Hunter have crazy good pro days. And I think Emeka Egbuka will as well, but all in different ways, right? Like, Emeka is going to be that short area, explosive kind of route runner. Hunter's going to be that just gifted, crazy good athlete that can do everything. And Tet's going to be a guy that is your jump ball winner, Alpha X, Drake London, Mike Evans type. So these three all have the upside to be top 12 dynasty wide receivers and skill set, but they're more like right away going to be like probably from 14 to 18 to 20-ish in that range, like right away as rookies, assuming they all go first round and Hunter plays wide out. But let's jump into B tier here, because Luther Burden, I think the critic on him, I feel like I started getting like to the point where I was like, I feel like I'm just disrespecting him a little bit because I like was posting out there Emeka, big tier, then Luther Burden. Like Luther Burden's not in the same tier as these guys. He's not on the same level as these guys. And a lot of people were really not loving it, but it almost seems like now everybody's on board with that, right? Like it seems like now Burden's kind of taking the step down. Now you got guys like Golden coming up and Tre Harris and stuff like that. But 80 plus receptions and 1,200 plus yards at 19 years old in the SEC, Dad. Like if we just pull up his profile here, he's a guy that checks every box as well. Above 2+ career yards per route run, hit 1,000 yards in a season, early declare, early breakout age. The only one that is a little questionable is the draft capital because I don't know for sure if he's going to be a first-round pick on the recent buzz. I think his combine just confirmed damn well he's going to be a first-round pick. Probably in the 20s, late 20s. But he's a guy that ran a 4.42 at 205 pounds. He ran routes. He looked smooth in the gauntlet. He doesn't drop the football. DJ Moore, Jaden Reed, Rashee Rice, that type of winner and that type of receiver, explosive yak guy. I think with Luther Burden in that wide receiver 4 range is a very good, comfortable spot to have him. And I think he's another one that can clock in to be a top 25 to 30 dynasty wide receiver with first-round draft capital.
Yeah, I think he belongs here. I think we have a little bit because in Devi, we wanted him to come out early. He was a lot of people's, wide receiver 1. We had him in a lot of situations where we've seen him for a while. We're able to see what kind of warts there are, what we think. I think draft capital is going to be everything because in Dynasty with him, I can see him going into A tier. But I could see him being in that B tier if he falls outside that first round. The crazy thing with the mock drafts, and again, that's just another tool to look at what we're doing here. But in the mock drafts, the last 4 I've seen from major analysts, he's fallen outside that first round. So that changes things a little bit. I think that really opens up the door for the next guy, the wide receiver 5 in this class. A lot of people have him all the way up to wide receiver 1 or 2 because he could be, because of his speed, the number 1 drafted wide receiver in this class. Matthew Golden works all 3 levels of the field. Fastest guy at the combine, 4.29. Fastest guy since 2003 at that 190-pound threshold. If you look at the way that he gets open, his ball skills are actually fantastic. Works all 3 levels. I think, we said Lance Zierlein compares him to Chris Olave. I see him as like more of a lesser Stephon Diggs. And I think the right situation, Matthew Golden could thrive in the NFL. I think he and the next guy make up B tier. That is a lot of upside. Like I think you're going to, unlike Luther Burden, I think Luther Burden's going to have to get a lot of manufactured touches. I think Matthew Golden is a very polished separator. He's going to get open a lot, as is the next guy. I mean, Tre Harris in this tier. Tre Harris is absolutely monster yard per route run, 5.15. He separates like crazy with Jackson Dart. And I think this guy and Golden have the biggest range of outcomes. We talk about guys that could be boom or bust. I think Tre Harris and Matthew Golden have both of that have that in their potential. Like I like both players, but they have upside to be way up there, like a Brian Thomas Jr. light. But they also have the profile that we could see them slip quite a bit.
Yeah, I love that. And I think you highlighted both of these guys really good. The thing with Matthew Golden that I like is he's a good separator, good route runner, and he's a chess piece. You can play him all over the field, Z, slot, X. He can kind of win at all 3 levels as a route runner, very smooth mover. The only question I think with him is just more overall polishness in his entire game, consistency, that type of part. I could see him being a really good number 2 in an offense, kind of playing like that Jordan Addison role. I really like the Jordan Addison comp too. Both good separators, both speedy players. But Tre Harris is a guy I think could end up being the best value out of all these guys that we've talked about because a lot of people are low on him. But if you look at the production, the profile in his film, he was really damn good. Like he's a guy, he came in at the combine. He was moving. And I know like a 4.52 doesn't look good on or 4.54 doesn't look great, but for a wideout, that's 205 pounds and 6'3". That's pretty good. And he had a pretty good 10-yard split at 1.56. But where he was really good was his vertical jump was 38.5 inches and 10.5 inch broad jump. Like he had a good combine. He had a 9+ raw score. He's a good friggin' player. Like he can win at all 3 levels. He could be good in the yak game. He posted 5+ yards per route run. through like 9 games this year. I think truly if Jackson Dart and him played a full season this year, I think Tre Harris would have had 2,000 yards receiving. Like truly, because he had like 1,100 in like 8 games. Like he was pacing ridiculous stats. He would have won the Biletnikoff Award, and he would be talked about as a first-round pick today. But because he got injured, we have the discount on him. The injury didn't matter. Look at him now. He tested at the combine. He did everything. He looked good in the drills. Nothing set him back. I think he's a guy that could be that. Let's say Travis Hunter plays DB more, and it's like they don't view him as a wideout, and it's Tet, Egbuka, Bird, and Golden, 4 first-round receivers. Tre Harris could be that 5th guy that sneaks in, or he's going to be one of the first names called on day 2 type player. So he's probably going to be one of those wide receivers that I like to go after in rookie drafts in that like early to mid second round range.
Yeah, I would love to see him in Houston early second, kind of move into that area where as long as he goes inside the top 40 to 45, I think Tre Harris stock is going to rise. And that is the end of our, we have our A tier with Egbuka, Tet McMillan, and Travis Hunter. Our B tier with Luther Burden, Matthew Golden, and Tre Harris. Now we move over to C tier. And to this point, we're looking at all guys that have top 24 dynasty wide receiver upside. Now we start to get into the area where, there's going to be a high variance. High variance, but the guy I like most out of this tier, and he just blew up the combine, 9.87 raw score. That is 46 out of 3,048 participants since 1987. That's really rare air, considering my man Jayden Higgins is 6'4", 33-inch arms, which is, that is in that 96th percentile. He is so smooth in that gauntlet drill. He looks like, when you watch him at the line, guy can separate. He does not look like a 6'4" wide receiver. And I think out of anybody in this tier, I think he has the biggest upside to move up. I could see a lot of teams falling in love with the way he gets open, with his size. I saw, our guy Joe Arico comped him to Drake London. I don't quite see him that high, but I do think he has a lot of upside in this C tier.
Yeah, love that on Jayden Higgins, another guy that had really good metrics as far as like production, analytics, and stuff like that. A guy that his yards per route run numbers were really good, off the charts. His production through his entire college football career were really good. So I have him comped out to like an Adonai Mitchell. I think that's I know AD Mitchell didn't really like do a ton his rookie year, but like he was still a really good prospect, a really good bigger wide receiver that separates really well and moves really fast. Another one that blew up the combine with a 4.3 something 40-yard dash. So jumping into this next guy here, it's Jalen Royals from Utah State, and he didn't do a ton at the combine besides run the 40, but he's also coming off a season-ending, I think, foot injury that only kept him to 8 games in 2024. This guy had like 800 plus yards and like he was pacing 1,400 plus yards this year at an early declare, a guy coming out in his 3rd year. Round 2 type talent, in my opinion. 1.49 10-yard split at 205 pounds. Ridiculous numbers from Jalen Royals, and he ran a 4.42. People don't realize how fast that is. Like, he was explosive. I saw that on film. Explosive yak guy, kind of in that Rashee Rice, that Jaden Reed type skill set and role, coming from smaller schools like those two as well. But fun, dynamic player that I think fits today's NFL really well. So I could see him kind of sliding in that early day 2 range and being a player on an NFL offense that gets some hype. Now you get to sell us on your guy. Sell us on Elic. Sell us on Elic.
He looks so good at the combine. He was smooth. My man's built. Like, he is going to be a very powerful, X wide receiver, a power slot type guy that is going to get open all the time. The fact that he ran a 4.44 at his size was really, really stood out to me. At first, a lot of people are starting to look at it and you're like, where's he going to go from Stanford? They start to try to comp on the low end, but I think he has early day 2 draft capital. And I think once we see that, he's going to be someone that is very pro ready, very polished. I think Royals and Higgins have a higher ceiling, but I do think Elic has a higher floor than both of these prospects. So I think he's pro ready. He goes to the right system. He becomes a security blanket and is a Ladd McConkey light type. I think that's in the realm of possibilities. But again, you put Ladd McConkey in the wrong system, and he's not that same guy. I don't think he's not the same talent as Ladd, but he's someone that is going to be in a system where he needs the right quarterback that can throw him open quickly.
I think Elic kind of profiles. He was an outside guy in college, but I think he profiles as that big slot kind of
Correct.
Traylon Burks, Juju Smith, Tyler Boyd, Chris Godwin type of player at the NFL level with physical size, good catching ability through traffic, strong hands, good tracking skills, all that type of things that you're looking for in a big slot type wide receiver. The last player in this C tier had himself a day and made himself some money, and that's Jaylin Noel. Jaylin Noel is actually how you pronounce it, from Iowa State. So another Iowa State wide receiver, explosive player. Like, I love it because I comped him to a Khalil Shakir type player who's another explosive short area athlete that's speedy and can win at all levels of the field, kind of does all the dirty work in traffic, catches the ball strong through traffic, through across the middle of the football field. He's honestly a better Khalil Shakir and better prospect than Khalil Shakir with his combine that he just put up. 41.5-inch vertical, 4.39 40, great splits. And he had, I think, an 11-foot broad or some crazy broad jump numbers. So checks every box as an athlete. He's going to get day 2 draft capital. The production was really solid this year as well. I mean, he's a guy that he's coming off a season where he had 820 plus yards and 1100 or 820 receiving yards. And then he had another season this year with 1100 yards. So he's a guy that can do it all, checks every box as a production standpoint. And he's going to be one of those guys probably that I'm going to try to target a lot in that day 2, round 2 to 3 of my rookie draft range, because I really like him and he's going to probably be the cheapest one of this tier. I think he's going to be a round 2 draft pick. I really do.
Yep.
Like, I really do. With that production and that combine he just had, he's a great route runner and he's explosive in short areas. And that's what you look for in fantasy football for these wideouts.
He gets early day 2, and I could see any of these guys in C out of these 4 guys, Higgins, Royals, Ayomanor, and Noel, they could jump. Like, they could move themselves up into that area. I don't think they're going to move above Tre Harris, but I could see them entering that tier if they really do. Moving down to our D tier here, Jack Bech, career year, 86.2 receiving yards per game, over 1,000 receiving yards, 8 or 9 receiving touchdowns this past year. He is one of the most consistent guys between what we saw at the Senior Bowl and then what we saw at the Combine. Sometimes, things don't always translate over. When you do it at 2 straight events like this, I think he really shows that he has surprising quickness and unexpectedly soft hands for a converted tight end. I think he's going to have a lot of upside at the next level and has a lot more physicality than some of these other guys that are going to be in D tier.
Yeah, Jack Bech, he's a fun player because he's a guy that had a really big Senior Bowl. He's a big physical slot. I think he's like 6'2", 210, 205 pounds. So big profile guy that, again, power slot at the next level. Does all the dirty work that you want from a receiver that most aren't willing to do. Good run blocker, good strong hands in traffic, can catch the ball well, can make plays after the catch. He's someone that I'm rooting for. I think he's a great kid. The stuff that happened with his brother, losing his brother back and with the incidents in New Orleans there. He's a guy that is coming for it all, going to prove that he's a stud. And I think that he's a high IQ, high motor type player that is going to outwork everybody on the field. And that stands out to me because if I see someone like that, I know that a coaching staff's going to want to get him on the field and want to use him and draft him and want that player on their team. So that's what stands out with him. Like, I could see him jumping into C tier for me. Like, that's where I'm at with Jack Bech.
So this next
Tez
one's
Johnson.
Interesting, right? So, okay. You look at him, he's had multiple seasons of 3.4 plus yards per route run.
Yeah.
Multiple seasons of 90 plus PFF grades. Multiple seasons of 80 plus receptions. Then he does fantastic at the Combine with a 37-inch vert, 4.15 shuttle. That's 4th best. 10-11 broad. That's 4th. 6.65 3-cone. That's the best. If he didn't weigh 154 pounds, if he didn't weigh, 4.51.
He was 170.
40.
If he was 170, we'd be talking about him as a top 8 wide receiver in this class.
100%, but
because the skill set's there.
154
I don't
pounds
think we can.
Because when you look at people just say, well, what about Devonta Smith? What about, but Devonta Smith?
They're like 175. Yeah.
Yeah. Like there's
They're
a big difference. 154, you're going to have to run like a 4.2, or you're going to have to be. And the biggest thing is I look at guys like that we've liked in the past, like Tutu Atwell, who have been really small. And you're like, No, they'll still find ways to win at the next level. And I think Tez Johnson does a lot of things well, but I don't know if that translates to the NFL, and that's why he's in D tier here.
Yeah, he's a guy that, I mean, like you said, the production, the analytics, the tape, I love the film. I thought he was wicked fast on film. Like, I was like, this guy's a burner. Like, you're not touching this guy. He's a human joystick. I'm sad because I think like he has a cool story as well. I know he lived with Bo Nix and his family while he was at Oregon for a while, and there was some family issues for him, and that family took him in. So I wouldn't be shocked if Bo Nix is like, Sean Payton, go get my guy Tez on day 3. I want him. He'll be a perfect separator for us. They need a player like that. That'd be great for them, and that would be honestly best case for Tez. But good route runner, natural feet, quick off the line of scrimmage. He really had a good combine. The 40 wasn't good, but a lot of these guys aren't long stride runners. Like, they're quick, explosive, but they don't have the long strides to cover enough ground quick enough. I think that was Tez Johnson's problem. And a lot of these guys aren't track guys. They're football players. They're not good at running a 40. They're not good at certain things that require that. They're just good at football. So you got to be able to adjust and realize the difference. But yeah, jumping into our wide receiver 14 here, let's talk about Xavier Restrepo, because he's a guy, another one like Jack Bech, like Elic Ayomanor, willing to get dirty, willing to run block, willing to catch the ball through traffic, very good hands. Like, I comped him to Julian Edelman. Sell us a little bit on his profile and what he does good. That'll make him good for fantasy potentially.
So he has multiple 1,000-yard seasons. I think he is a really good deep threat. The interesting thing for me is 5'9", 205. He is the first player to be under 5'10" and be over 200 pounds at the wide receiver position since 2003. So 22 years since we've had a guy at this size. So he's going to have to be someone that is an elite separator. I don't quite see it. I like his tape. I think it's really cool as far as him and Cam Ward, warming up together, getting ready for the combine. I like the player, but he's really going to have to be at that size, just ball out to even be a guy that's considerable at that area. So, I mean, I think he's my wide receiver 14 and definitely belongs in this. And then our wide receiver 15 is Isaiah Bond. Isaiah Bond came through a little bit of a clown type take, saying he was going to come out and run a 4.2 or a 4.19 and have the fastest combine. If you do look, though, in miles per hour, there's only been 2 guys to break 24 miles per hour in the last 2 years, and it's Xavier Worthy and Isaiah Bond. So on the football field, he ran, I think, on 24.17 miles per hour compared to Worthy's 24.51. So I think his speed is better than what he showed at the combine. I believe he ran a 4.4.
4.4.
But
4.39 maybe.
I think he's faster than that, but I think out of the Texas wide receivers that we've seen over the last 2 years, he's probably the lowest on the, graded out of all these guys.
Yeah, he's the lowest. He's the 4th lowest. I definitely would have Worthy, AD Mitchell, and Golden all over him. He'd be the 4th lowest. Again, a guy that profiles to be a slot guy, speedy guy, good route runner. He had 9+ yards after catch per reception this year. The issue with him, production was never there, ever. At Bama, at Texas, it was never there. And he started off really good this year. He had a lot of flashes, but he never really put it all together, and he battled through some injuries. I see John Mechie. I see a little Wan'Dale Robinson. I actually think those guys were much better prospects than he was coming out. But that's like the type of role and like outcome I could see. I mean, I could see him being a kind of that slot receiver role player, but I'm not going to touch this guy in rookie drafts. He's just kind of closing out the top 15 for us before we jump into the last dart throw tier here. But Ty Felton made himself some money at the combine, Dad. He ran a 4.3 plus at 200, 190 something plus pounds. He's a guy that comes in around 6'1", 180. He has that Troy Franklin build, kind of that long, lengthy build, but he's explosive. And he's a guy that coming out of Maryland. He had a lot of good seasons under his belt. I mean, this past season, 2.3 plus yards per route run, 57 first downs caught, 1,100 yards in the receiving game, 9 touchdowns, 96 receptions, utilizing the screen game, explosive after the catch, that type of player there with a Ty Felton. And then going to Savion Williams. This is a guy that everyone's comping Cordell Patterson because he's this 6'5", 220-pound wide receiver running back. I got to watch him in person. He was so good against Oklahoma State when I watched him. He was rushing the ball. He was catching 2-point conversions. He was catching the football over the field. he's like a fun gadget player that could be decent in fantasy in the right situation, but he's probably a day 3 guy. I like the Cordell Patterson comp, but he's not going to be. I think Cordell Patterson was a first-round pick. He's not going to be a first-round pick. Talk to us a little bit about Ricky White and kind of Kyle Williams here. Ricky White out of UNLV, analytics darling, but he didn't have a good combine. Kind of comps out to Jacoby Myers for me. That was my comp pre-combine. 4.6 40, so he's a slower guy like Myers was. Talk to us a little bit about Ricky here.
What's nice about Savion Williams, he did run a 4.4. I think he's going to be an interesting pick. He's got to be in the right system. Ricky White is someone that I'm not going to be when it comes to Kyle Williams, Ricky White, guys like this towards the end, I'm not going to be investing in them when it comes to my rookie drafts. I mean, he did have 43.6% target share at UNLV, which is absolutely crazy.
Ridiculous yards per out runs too.
46.9% dominator rating. That's 94th percentile. 18.6 breakout age. That's 96th percentile. But I'm just, when it comes to my 4th round picks, I'm going to be taking shots on running backs like we talked about on our last show. This running back class is deep. The wide receiver class, not quite the same. So I'm not really in on Ricky White or Kyle Williams. I'm not going to probably come away with any of them. I'm probably going to trade back, trade out, kind of do those kind of
they're
things.
late day. These are all late day 3 guys.
So to recap our guys here, we're talking A tier, no S tiers. A tier, Tetairoa McMillan, Emeka Egbuka, Travis Hunter. That's it. We got 3 guys in A tier. Yep. All 3 of them have really high ceilings. We go into B tier, and we got Luther Burden, Matthew Golden, and Tre Harris. Again, very high ceilings. I think all 3 of these guys could jump into A tier. And they could be round 1 draft capital. Likely, I think Golden definitely does. The other 2 definitely go round 2. Then we move into our C tier. Jayden Higgins, Jalen Royals, Elic Ayomanor, and Jaylin Noel. All 4 could be round 2, round 3. They'll definitely be going on day 2. And I think they have some nice upside that adds to this class. A lot of people say that there's just 5 guys. These guys are okay. These guys I think are going to give you nice, solid production, but nothing sexy, right? I saw
they're better than your Roman Wilsons. They're better than those Roman Wilsons, Jermaine Burtons. They're better than those guys were last year. They really are.
And this class has very few Pro Bowlers in the future. It has a lot of starters, and that's the one thing we keep talking about is there's going to be a lot of starters in there. These guys have that. We go into D tier, Jack Bech, Tez Johnson, Xavier Restrepo, and Isaiah Bond. Those are our guys in D tier. And then we don't really call it E tier. We'll call it a dart throw, but Ty Felton, Savion Williams, Ricky White, Kyle Williams. So this class, it has some juice. It has there's going to be a lot of opportunities for wide receivers because our wide receiver landscape is aging out a little bit. There's going to be a lot of opportunities for these guys to come in and make impacts early. But Snoog, I mean, what is your biggest takeaway post-combine? We went over these guys. We're talking about where they might go. But what's the biggest takeaway that you have when we're saying this is what this class is all about?
Yeah, for the wide receiver position, I think it's going to lie in the strength of Tet McMillan, Emeka Egbuka, Travis Hunter, Luther Burden, Matthew Golden, Tre Harris. I think those 6 guys, especially the top 3 I named, are really going to pave the way for how this class projects, especially at the wide receiver position. It's already a super deep wide receiver landscape in the dynasty football industry that we're in. There's 30 guys that are we don't know where to put. Waddle is in that mid to late 20s range at this point. And it's the landscape's so deep, but I really think Tet, Emeka, and Travis Hunter can all be wide receiver 1s on their NFL offense and all slot in to be sure thing, rock solid wide receiver 1s, high end 2s right away too. But it's it gets to your Burden, Golden, Tre Harris, where it's 1 or 2 of these guys need to hit for us, right? If we get an Adonai Mitchell, Rome Odunze, and Keon Coleman group right here, and none of them show up really. Rome had a good rookie year, but you know what I mean? Then it's gonna be people are gonna hate on this wide receiver class. It's really not very, very good, but it's a solid wide receiver class. It's not bad. Reminds me of 2022 a little bit with London, Pickens, Garrett, Olave, Jameson Williams. I think that class was slightly better as a wide receiver class. I think it was definitely better, but this one's pretty similar to that. Not the worst one we've seen, but one of the weaker ones as of recent that we've been getting.
So what I'm hoping is these wide receivers get the draft capital to push down my
Yep.
running backs so I can smash as many running backs as possible and move into that direction. Thanks again for tuning in, guys, and enjoy the process.